Good morning, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Make Saints podcast. I'm Drew Downs, and this one is called Active Adaptation. In a previous episode, I talked about the incredible power of the concept of our ability to get used to things, that we can so adapt to our present conditions that we become convinced that they have always been this way. That this is actually one of our superpowers as people. This is something that is a potent part of our brains, and it has a dark side, which is what I talked about last time. I want to talk a little bit about motivating us from that dark side of sort of pretending and avoiding and refusing to take responsibility for who we are and letting and pretending as if the world just works or time just goes by and it does all of the work for us, that we don't actually have to participate in our community and being good people. We don't actually have to do anything to influence the world around us, that we'll all just get used to things. Using that power in its worst way. I want to bring up this vision of active adaptation, that there are things that we need to do today so that we can prepare for that future. In essence, there are some things that we need to learn how to get used to, because our future selves are going to literally kill each other over this stuff if we don't start thinking about it now. And so there's some of this involves the sort of future projection about climate change and the like, and geopolitics. And so there's a lot of that junk that we can really dig into if we really wanted to, and I encourage you to try and do some of that yourself. But there are essentially three ideas that I think would be valuable to think about, and that involves migration patterns, human migration, and the need to deal with human migration. And really, it's not three. It's just that one. Let's just talk about that one. We need to actively adapt to this reality that parts of our globe will become uninhabitable. I think one of the other things I had in mind, of course, was to talk about water, and sources of water will force people into new orientations, like new places. Like we can't live in certain places because we're draining the aquifer, right? And we're melting the ice caps. So there's no new sources of fresh water in these places. So we're going to drain them and run out of opportunity for people to live there, right? So that's one thing. But it also has geopolitical implications where people are gonna literally fight over this stuff. But the sort of second order of this is that people will fight over relocation. So, one of the things that we talk a lot about in the Midwest is our proximity to the Great Lakes. And so we're, those of us who live in the upper Midwest can be like, hey, we got lots of water here. You guys are screwed. And you sort of pretend like that's a them problem. But it would eventually, if things go in that way and this becomes a more desirable place for people to migrate to, our populations will increase. And suddenly we have a lot more people wanting to share that water. And suddenly we'll become really protective of that water. And our own behaviors will change around our use of that water, won't they? Right? We'll suddenly turn into monsters, those monsters that I highlighted last time. This isn't about the issues themselves. I want to name what is this big picture vision, which means starting to learn how we're behaving with each other now around the things that will become most important in the future. And that includes dealing with major changes in populations, major shifts in population. And that means we don't get to worry. I live in Terre Haute, Indiana. Population here is about 60,000 people. It's actually stayed pretty stable for a century. So we look at this as if like populations are always the same, that there is no population change. Like I was in a small town in which the same people were in the town that grew up in that town, and they just lived there. And they had no concept of like how other communities like fluctuated because like all the kids left. They went to college and then left town forever. That populations grow and change and decline, and that these things change. And so we're not actually planning ahead. We're not thinking ahead. One of those similar things is that we don't actually have a status for climate refugees. So we have people who can no longer live where they live. They will die if they stay where they are. Now, if they will die because someone will kill them, they can be a refugee. But if the planet will kill them, they can't be. And that's kind of dumb. That's like the most arbitrary of lines of demarcation we could make. It's incredibly arbitrary. But those of us who care about the rules get really obsessed about making those distinctions. But in a future where more of the globe becomes uninhabitable, where more people will die because of heat and lack of access to water, lack of access to food, that people will not be able to stay where they are without proper systems to support that migration and letting people move, right? If we don't start planning for that, our future selves will then have to make literal life and death choices about living people then. And do you think it'll be easier then than now? Of course not. We can actively adapt now to prepare ourselves for that future. So the most obvious parts are building our capacity for growth, right? So when those of us who live in the northern climes, those of us who live near spaces that would be desirable for migration to occur, we get used to it. Like we start building that up and we start preparing for the future so that when that happens, we won't kill people over it, right? We can start doing the sort of same kinds of active adaptation now to embody that kind of future. This can also happen in your own life. This is why you start developing living wills, right? Because you need to and advanced directives. You need to plan. You need to think. We need to think ahead and prepare for the future. It doesn't alleviate the conflict, but it reduces that conflict, and it prepares us now for a more secure future. And we do this. We know how to do this. Businesses love doing this. Lawyers love doing this. But for some reason, lawyers and businesses only like doing this for businesses. They certainly don't want to do this for the country. They don't want to do this for the people. They don't want to do this for nonprofits, right? They don't want to do this for the infrastructure in our cities. Yeah, they just want to do it for themselves. We need to get used to doing this for one another, right? Building up this capacity for one another. right? Making it so that people who are kids now will have a future in which they can start families and have childcare. That parents and people childless, those who are childless, can grow old and not worry about bankruptcy, losing your home, and being destitute. And there are pieces of what it means to live in society that we can actively adapt to today to make those future conditions better for all of us. And it is not that hard. In fact, we can capitalize on how easy it is to get used to it. Right? We can get used to just about anything, which means some of these harebrained schemes are not so harebrained after all, are they? Some of them make a lot of sense. We can figure out how to, work on infrastructure. We can rebuild our schools. We can offer healthcare to everybody. These things are actually very, very doable, right? And our future selves will thank us. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.